Now, I featured AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, on last night's Lefties Losing It, and she managed to humiliate herself again in Munich with another incoherent attempt to answer basic questions. I've already played you her trying to talk about Taiwan, Mexico, America, and she attempted to fact-check Marco Rubio's 100% factual comment about the origins of American cowboys. That didn't go too well. And she tries to make another profound point here that backfires.
We look at what happened in Venezuela, for example. It is not a remark on who Maduro was as a leader. He canceled elections. He was an anti-democratic leader. That doesn't mean that we can kidnap a head of state and engage in acts of war just because the nation is below the equator. And
oh, that was her big point, south of the equator. I mean, AOC not only needs to brush up on economics, history, but also geography, it seems, because she has no clue. And those idiots in the crowd clapping along like they just heard some brilliant point. What can you say?
She was so close. She was so close because there is a legitimate critique that far more serious people than her make about the Maduro operation. And leaving aside, what the premise was, some would say the pretext of it, you are going in and taking out a head of state, illegitimate or otherwise. She could have left it there and actually had some legitimacy, but then she had to add in that south of the border. And I think that that's code for some kind of racial undertone because it's brown and black. And sorry to our friends in Australia who are south of the equator, they don't count, or South Africa or Chile or Argentina or many other countries that aren't black and brown dominant, to use their lingo. She forgot about that, swept them under the rug, and that is the only frame that she will fall into.
Well, what is the broader point there? Are they still arguing that removing Maduro, this dictator, this man who's destroyed what was once a wealthy country into one where millions have fled, they're still arguing that's a bad thing, this audacious plan that they managed to pull off without losing a single American life? I mean, that argument in itself, I think, is pretty silly.
They can't criticize the operation because it really was just a feat, and the whole world marveled at American military might, which is still present, even though it hadn't been used in that way in some time. So they try to argue on the policy of, you're going into sovereign countries and trying to do something about it. But they're not even really loyal to that point either, or justified, because you check her record and she's voted for all sorts of intervention elsewhere. So it's only when it doesn't suit them. And I think this might be a shallow point, but I think they love to feign sophistication, the Spanish speakers in America, especially with their pronunciations of Maduro and Venezuela.
That's
she just wants to talk about that.
The pronunciations, I think, is all she was interested in there. And yes, I've got some real insight because of that. Oh, please. Now, let's talk about the Epstein files. And the Democrats are not happy that despite the media regurgitating their misinformation, the release of these files is damaging the left, including Democrat luminaries like Bill Clinton and billionaires like Reid Hoffman and Bill Gates. But Jen Psaki is still in denial.
It is Trump, yes, and everybody should continue to dig more about that. But it is the wealthy, the elites, and basically every faction of the world. It's global leaders. It's people in the business sector. It is people in Hollywood, probably. Who knows? It is a bunch of people who think that they can get away with anything.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Kosha, but it wasn't that long ago Jen Psaki was characterizing anybody who talked about an elite group of abusers running the show as QAnon conspiracy theorists and wackos. And now she's pretty much repeating their lines there.
Absolutely. I think the dam has broken. So now there's no denying it. There's the 8 million or so emails and all sorts of names, including very prominent Democrat names from her side, and other people from all around the world are in there. So she can't deny it anymore. So now they're all glomming on. We talked last week about the MSNBC host. Everybody's glomming on to that reality that there is this superstructure out there of elites that seem to operate with impunity up until now. True, but nobody takes him seriously because her boss was in charge for 4 years. Many other people have been in charge for years and years before. It's been 20 years since he was convicted, and nothing has happened. And even till now, I would note, the emails are out, but no arrests have happened.
Well, that to me seems remarkable because I haven't obviously read through the millions of documents, but I've read plenty that seem to call for, at the very least, a thorough investigation. But you would think when you're talking about, I mean, some of the code words are just so obvious where they're talking about beef jerky, for example, and they're not talking about beef jerky. But even in one exchange, Epstein refers to a torture video with someone quite prominent. How is that not being explored further? That just seems, again, to me, remarkable. Why would that be? This is really undermining faith in the entire justice system.
It really is. And I will say this, even though Jen Psaki missed that point, this really was an issue of the right, and the Trump campaign on this, most transparent administration in history, drained the swamp, and a big part of his base, not all of the base, but a big part of the base, this was the number one issue for them. Yeah. Not because they necessarily care about Epstein or particular people that did things at one point in time, but they do care about that, but it's about what it says about the system and justice and equal justice for all. And given that that hasn't happened, either accidentally or by happenstance, the left seems to have sort of taken the issue away from Trump a little bit, and now it's sort of this big amorphous blob and all sorts of people are implicated, and they have certainly lost the higher ground on this issue, and it was
I think it's Trump's
error.
Biggest misstep by some margin when he allowed Pam Bondi to say, nothing to see here, there's no charges, the case is closed, and he kind
big
of
fumble.
Lost, like you said, this was his issue. This was the issue that his base cared about. And by doing that, he also cast himself in a guilty light. People are wondering, well, why doesn't he want this investigated? Is it because he's in the files in a way that he doesn't want explored? And from what we've seen, that is not the case. In fact, the files show that he was in contact with law enforcement, encouraging them to investigate Jeffrey Epstein, encouraging them to investigate Ghislaine Maxwell, being really grateful that that issue was being pursued. So it hasn't damaged him that way, but the narrative from much of the media is still that he's been compromised, and I think that's going to hurt him.
It will.